Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my second to last day of the August Alphabet Challenge, which means we're on to the letter Y. So you guys voted for Yojimbo, which basically is Japanese for The Bodyguard. It's a film that is written and directed by Akira Kurosawa, the legendary Japanese director. The film stars regular Akira Kurosawa collaborator Toshiro Mifune, who plays the role of Sanjuro, who is basically the main character. He's this, Ronin, not a samurai, 'cause he's a samurai without a master. He kind of goes about things in his own way, but he's a very skilled swordsman. And he kind of happens upon this village that is caught in this kind of gang war. You've got one gang on either side of the village, all fighting basically to become the top gamblers, to take control of the gambling within this small town. And yeah, Sanjuro comes along, gets caught in the middle of it, and suddenly people want him to be their bodyguard because he reveals himself to be such a skilled swordsman. Either side thinks, well, if we've got him in our pocket, we can't lose. Now, I actually saw the sequel to this film, or it's actually a prequel, because based on what we see on screen, you would say it was a few years before this film, and that is Sanjuro. Now, Sanjuro, of the films of Akira Kurosawa's that I've seen, is actually my favourite film. Now, I'm nowhere near to being a Kurosawa expert. I've not seen even half of his work, so take that with a pinch of salt. But yeah, of the 6 or so films of his that I've seen, Sanjuro is my favourite, and I did see it before this film. So I was looking forward to this one, to be honest, and given the fact that this one has a reputation of being better than Sanjuro, I was really looking forward to it. One of the main reasons for that is this character of Sanjuro, played by Mifune. It's his performance, I think, that really makes me warm to this guy. So it's just, he's a bit of a tramp. You know, if you didn't have a samurai sword strapped to his side, you would take him for a tramp. His hair is quite unkempt. He's always itching and scratching parts of his body, like he's, brushing off some fleas. This guy just does not seem like a samurai, but he's usually the smartest guy in the room. Well, he's always the smartest guy in the room, and he's quite feline. He doesn't move at great speed until he has to. It's only when violence erupts that he suddenly shows his skill, but any other time you could be forgiven for thinking that this guy is a bit of a half-wit. But it's kind of like, it's something he projects, I think, just to lull people into a false sense of security that perhaps he isn't quite as good as his reputation would have it. But no, I like the character. I love Mifune's performance. It cracks me up the way he deals with a lot of the madness that surrounds him, never losing his cool, always kind of, you can see the cogs turning. And yeah, he comes across as a bit of a vagabond, someone who's an opportunist who just wants to make money. He kind of falls into this situation, recognises that he can play both sides, recognises that he can make money off it, and that's what he proceeds to do. But it turns out that he has a bit of a conscience, and when things go morally askew, he sees either side doing things that are morally bankrupt. That's when the need to make money kind of is overtaken by his moral duty to do something, and obviously I like that quality in a character. In many ways, this film feels something like a Coen Brothers film. If the Coen Brothers made a samurai film, I feel like it would be a lot like this, because in many ways it's quite farcical. A lot of the characters in it are quite farcical. There's some very obscure looking people. There's this one guy with a monobrow and goofy teeth who's it's considered to be quite a violent man, but yeah, that he has a reputation as a violent man, a hard man, and he's a goof. He looks like an imbecile. And then you've got this other guy, this really big guy who looks almost like Jaws from the James Bond series. You know, he's clearly the muscle. And then this other crazy guy with a gun. He just keeps on popping a gun out. He's supposed to be a samurai warrior. He's got a samurai sword by his side, and every time he gets into a battle, he pulls this cowardly move of just flipping a gun out and shooting someone, which again, is quite funny. It's quite farcical in many ways, but I just feel like if you take something like a Coen Brothers film like Burn After Reading, in which it's a film about idiots, essentially it's a film about idiots doing idiotic things. It's kind of like a ringing indictment on humanity, and in many ways this film is the same. You got one character. Well, there's a couple of characters actually. Sanjuro being the obvious one, but then there's this other character who he kind of teams up with. He's kind of on neutral ground. He's right in the middle of the town, and he's basically a sake seller. He sells sake and food and whatnot. And he seems to be the only guy in the town with any sense, with any kind of moral compass. And so obviously Sanjuro is going to latch onto this guy and befriend this guy. He sees something in him that is honest and true. So yeah, but everyone else in the film has a mischievous agenda, has, like I say, it's a level of moral bankruptcy that is quite evident, but to such a degree that it, as I say, becomes farcical. And that's where I draw the Coen brothers kind of correlation. Akira Kurosawa was very concerned with that particular theme of conformity within Japanese culture. It's something he often liked to dissect and attack in many ways with comedy. The way that the culture around him was often led like sheep in many ways. They had to hear someone kind of telling them what to do, and then they would all do it. And if you broke away from that conformity, you kind of didn't know what to do, and you would run around like a headless chicken. And that's what a lot of the characters in this film do. And so you can see that kind of social commentary there from Kurosawa. Now, of the two films that this character spawned, although there's three actually, because I know that they did do a team up with Zatoichi, which I'm looking forward to getting around to. Zatoichi versus Sanjuro. But of the two that I've seen, the reputation that these films have is generally that this film, Yojimbo, is not only the better of the two, but is also the heavier of the two, the more serious of the two, and that Sanjuro is definitely more within the realms of farce and comedy. I gotta say, watching this one, I don't really get that. I think they're both on the same plane, to be honest. I think Kurosawa is having fun here. A lot of fun. Some of these characters are idiots. A lot of these characters are idiots, and it's funny to watch them. And I don't really feel that heaviness that a lot of people talk about when they're critiquing these two movies. To me, they're both peas in a pod. Two peas in a pod that sit very well alongside each other. But as it happens, I think I do still like Sanjuro a little bit more. I think I've got to watch it again. It's been a long time since I've seen Sanjuro, but no, I think it's one of those instances where the sequel was actually just a little bit better. Now, I do love me a good Western. I'm a fan of, when you have Westerns that are done really well, then I love them. I think Unforgiven, Eastwood kind of stuff. I think Open Range and the films that Kevin Costner's worked on. I love a good Western. And it's been said many times. Again, Kurosawa's work has been criticised and reviewed and dissected now for over 60 years. So there's nothing I can say here that probably hasn't been said already. But there are obvious correlations between the samurai movie, particularly Kurosawa's samurai movies, and the westerns that came both before and after it. They both inspired each other. But I look at the opening of this film when Sanjuro makes his way into town, and some of the ways in which Kurosawa films it, shoots it, the way he does the crash zooms and follows the back of the head of Sanjuro as he's walking down the town so that you can see up in the windows of the buildings above him. It's right out of a Western. You know, it feels very much like a John Ford Western. And I know that Kurosawa was a fan of John Ford, and the two of them kind of bounced off of each other in their work. But yeah, clearly a lot of inspirations here have gone into the Western genre and vice versa. Yeah, if you've never seen a samurai movie, but you are a fan of Westerns, you owe it to yourself to check out Kurosawa's samurai stuff. Tatsuya Nakadai is in this film as well as the villain. He's the gunslinger guy that I was talking about. And funnily enough, he plays the villain in Sanjuro as well. So yeah, Kurosawa was never afraid to use the same actors, even in sequels to films he'd already made, playing different characters, which is kind of bizarre. It's almost, in many ways, it's like a remake or a slight revamping. You're taking the same actors, giving them different roles. It's amusing to me. But this guy, he looks, in this film at any rate, he looks almost Western, kind of like a bootleg young Al Pacino. But I kind of like him as well. I like the way he sneakily brings the gun out often, and his final scene as well is a little bizarre, to be honest. He's got an awful lot of love for this gun, it must be said, maybe too much. But I like, yeah, that final showdown, the final face-off between him and Sanjuro, proving that skill is always going to win out over cowardice. So I really liked Yojimbo. I would highly recommend it. I obviously recommend Sanjuro even more, and you can quite easily check that out before this film as I did, because it is indeed a prequel. But no, I'm going to give Yojimbo a 4 out of 5. Not Kurosawa's best, but certainly better than most people's best. Yeah, you can see why this guy is considered a master. I'm always, yeah, every time I watch one of his films, I'm always like, I seriously need to check out more of this guy's work. And I am going to do precisely that. So, yeah, Yojimbo, 4 out of 5 from me. But what about you? Are you a fan of Kurosawa? And if so, where would you position this film within his body of work? One of your favourites or not so much? Yeah, leave your comments down below. Let me know your thoughts. Do check out the links for the August Alphabet Challenge in the description box. Trying to raise money for a women's refuge in Zambia. So anything you could donate would be absolutely amazing. But yeah, until tomorrow, when we're on our final film for this challenge, which will be Zulu, cracking.